Hi, this is Tony Self, president of the Peninsula Breakfast Club. Today, we actually had a pretty cool speaker, one of our very own, Tom Booth. He presented a meeting of the club back in 1991. So he shared with the group all the past founders, all the past members that have been so integral in actually having what we have today. Pretty much the same format, meeting at the Red Onion at 7:30. And we thought it was a great presentation. And then I talked to Tom. I said I'd be happy to put it on YouTube so we can share this with the members and they can also enjoy and see how things were back in 91. A lot of interesting outfits and great haircuts. But one thing it does show is that our club is very consistent. It really fosters a lot of camaraderie, friendships, being around those that you trust and you get to know as friends. So that was really cool to kind of see, how things were done and how it's still pretty much the same, even from 1991 to 2024. So hope you enjoy this. I try to boost up the audio. I do apologize. This is from 1991, which was a VHS camcorder. So I'll put some I don't know, the subtitles on it for you so you can actually review it that way. But hope you enjoy it. This is Tony Self, president of the Peninsula Breakfast Club for year 2024, signing off, and hope you enjoy it. And if you want to have breakfast on me at the club, give me a holler. Love to see you there, and so we can make more and some new friends to the group. All right, hope you enjoy. Have a good one. Take care.
7:30 in the morning on a Saturday at a place called the Red Onion. What all is going to happen here this morning, only time will tell. It's great to be among the present. I got up this morning, read the obituary column, not listed, but here we are, ready to go for the Tom Dowdell Roast. Take it away, visitors. The courtyard of the Red Onion, where the elite meet to eat. That is, well, some of them eat. Some of them just show up. Here's a friendly-looking group. And their usual morning coffee. Hello, Bud. How are you this morning?
Coffee's good. Coffee's great. I hope the cameraman is good.
Well, he's going to try. Hear that Duke Argabright back there. If you step up a little bit, I could hear what he has to say.
I understand that you're willing Tom Dowdell to provide it. That's glad to hear that we're going to do something for him. It's a great program. Tom is program on touring, bicycle touring.
Indeed. Thank you, Duke.
No, I don't know what's going on.
Tom? Tom? Tom, would you mind repeating that? I had a little malfunction here.
Let's see, what
This is Tom Dowdell, our past president.
This is a great organization, very important to the people that are here. And important to men to find some good companions, particularly at our age in life.
Indeed. What's the matter with our age in life?
Nothing. Better and better. I've got to go get
Hi, fellas, yes.
Especially as compared with the alternative.
Indeed. Well, I read the obituary column this morning. I wasn't listed, so here we are.
You are. It's a lot better, and you put your camera on, and now you're ready to record this event, right?
Exactly. Thanks, fellas. That's from you. Bill, good morning. How do you really think about this scrapbook idea? That's a good idea. All right. How do you like this group coming together here?
Well, it's great.
I can almost see half of them.
When are you going to be there?
Vern, how'd you like to close into that group a little bit?
Close into the group.
I'd like to get all three of you to this scrapbook.
Are you annotating this?
Not a bit. Just tell me, is my red light flashing?
Yeah, see the Dos Supremo, that means number one.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
All you heathens have to bend down and
How'd you get that to fit that curve of that front of your body?
it's custom design.
It must have been.
By my Jewish neighbors in Hollywood.
It must have been. Don, you're doing a great job. I don't care what they say.
Well, I don't know who's going to get this morning, but we changed the command and I'm getting it.
You're a good group. Thanks.
Someone is getting some scrapbook.
As long as we don't fill it with scrap, we're in good shape, huh?
Well, good. That's a good idea.
All right, we'll see how this turns out. Fortunately, we can edit these things.
What?
Fortunately, we can edit these things.
Well, it takes time.
Yeah. Takes talent, too. We're a little short of the ladder.
Well, I've been out of town, and the guys I want to run through this.
This group out when they come through the line, we'll get a lot of chatter.
Yeah, that'll be great. That's, you fixing this up for Tom?
Yeah, a little bit of a deal.
Oh, that's great.
How are we doing this morning? Don't fade away. Hi, Norm. Couple looking candidates here. Good looking candidates. Anything to say for this scrapbook, Norm? Any comments to make for our scrapbook?
What have we got to say for that?
Good morning. Good morning. That's a likely start.
It's going to be forever.
Well, there's a little bit of posterity here. We'll get you coming through the breakfast line. That will be our best shot, I'm sure. Here are two gentlemen that we're going to hear more from later on. On my right is our supreme storyteller, one Vic Bennett. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Talking to you.
In case you haven't heard, we're just putting a little scrapbook together, and we're doing some cameo shots here, and later on we're going to hear from you on a more formal basis. Right, Vic?
Hey, you have sound on that?
Oh, there's sound all right.
You have everything. You know, Mr. Gormley, of course.
Sure. Yeah. Pleasure to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you. It's nice to be here.
All right. As this program gets a little more formal, so will these scripts. Vic, you're going to have a story for us this morning, aren't you?
I always have to.
Ah, good show. Thanks, guys. Standing on team, wouldn't you have a few words for our little scrapbook this morning?
Well,
Bob, you want to get in there too?
Hey, listen, it's a beautiful morning.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, sure. You betcha.
Among some beautiful people.
I haven't seen the green pot, but I know that the coffee I use at home now is Columbia Select, which is 50% decaffeinated.
And we know the red onion only serves the best, right?
We were talking about a green pot for the top of the coffee in a restaurant and not knowing what that was.
All right.
Orange and brown we can figure out.
Well, guys, when the meeting gets started, we'll be a little more formal. We'll have some script work to do here, so thanks for your comments.
light show. See when you need a guy. It's right in your face. Can you see it on the left side? No.
Listen to all this dialogue, all this excitement.
Yeah.
Calm down, Bob Cornelius. Board members, any comments for our little scrapbook here?
Well, he's looking for a treasury replacement. Right.
Is that right?
And Bill just walked in and said he'd take it.
Well, there's a nasty rumor around that we're still looking for the treasury, not just the replacement.
Well, yes. We're on the way to see. You don't mind if I break in?
No, bud. Glad to have you aboard.
At least I signed in so Fred doesn't go after me.
Hey, Fred, I forgot to sign in my rush. Would you mind doing that for me?
Not at all. I'll put your name down twice.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Just don't send me the bill.
Twice.
Morning, guys. How are we doing this morning? We're putting a little cameo together.
We're doing great.
Good. Good to see you this morning. Ladies and gentlemen, this courtyard will be filled with the august membership of the Palos Verdes Peninsula Breakfast Club, better known as the Peninsula Club. And the little technical difficulties, Tom, that we've had as we come along here, I think we've got them all ironed out on this recalcitrant Saturday morning. Some equipment likes to sleep longer than others. We'll see how this room looks to you in a matter of moments as our good group assembles and pays particular homage to you on this great morning to be alive. And we're looking forward to all the activity. Morning is putting a little bit of a cameo together for Tom Dowdell and sort of making a little scrapbook for him. This might be his last meeting with us for a while. Anything to say to the old guy?
Wherever he's going.
Well, we'll have a little more of a formal program and script a little later on, so prepare to participate. Thank you. Bob, are you bringing this out? Here they come. I thought this...
You know who the real winners are.
Oh, here he is again.
I'm trying to get this line started, Tom. Why don't you lead this group out here?
Working in
CNN, yeah.
CNN.
He and Peter
Right.
Arnett ought to go over to wherever the next war is. Where is the next war going to be?
We'll start on here in a few minutes if these guys don't show up.
We are because
I'm getting cold out here. Hi, Gunther. Speak to us, will you?
Good morning.
Good morning. We want some...
I need some juice too.
We need some stage comments for this little scrapbook we're putting together.
you're doing
I'm not so sure if we get any stage comments that early in the morning.
I just have two words.
You gotta go to the desert.
I just have two words to say to Tom Dowdell.
What's that?
Scalable font.
Really? Would you like to explain that?
I think all about that.
He understands what that is. Scalable font.
That cost $12,000.
Well, I read the obituary column this morning. I wasn't listed, so that's why I'm here, Tom.
I got a call from Bob Gilchrist, who is the guy I got from L.A. He said there was an article in PC Magazine about the subject, everything Twain should have been doing to find Twain anymore.
I told Tom he'll have a very long commute to our breakfast club meetings from now on.
But I'm located near the metro, so I can get right out there and come on the train.
I heard some rumor about your demise or departure here, Tom. I don't understand all that. You got any comments about that?
You didn't know about it?
No, I
They're
didn't.
driving me out of the club.
Driving you out, huh? They're kicking you out.
I've been speaking too much, and they're drawing the line.
He has agreed to leave the two of us pressing charges.
All right. I understand that.
Good morning. Good morning. How are you?
Cold out there.
Nice to stay with Dad a month.
Is it really? We gotta do something about that. How's everything going here?
Just fine, thank you. You get that line moving, and so we get fed, we'll be in good shape.
Yeah. The chef is getting crazier, isn't it?
And we still don't have a treasurer.
Oh, we don't.
No, would you like to be treasurer? This is a little bit of a smoke screen to...
This is just a typical caucus, people, of how this club is or isn't run. Host has arrived. Now the hurdle turtles will start. And all these good-looking guys are coming through the line.
Go either side. Fine, thank you.
I've never seen such a quiet line here in my life.
What do we got? Johnny reunions today?
Yeah. Oh, we do? Good. Looks like a great repast here.
Go either side. All right.
What's a great repast? Is that better than the future?
We have to look at it. Is that right?
I take my hat off to that. I walked with him once.
Is this in Korea?
Well, that's all right.
They're hungry citizens.
Bradley was a colonel out right past.
And we have our little accidents once in a while. I had that on tape. Duke, you're in trouble.
You know, you're going to ruin everything.
No, no, no.
I'll put you in the nasty guy who goes out and watches the policeman beat the hell out of him.
Well, I'll take that nickel you're offering me when this job is done.
That's the bread line. I'm going to play here. You have a handle.
Hey, Vern. Tell me, why was this line so late in getting started? I can't imagine.
Me?
amazing. We're waiting for someone.
Yeah.
I guess the one. It's the first time I've seen a new menu.
Domande.
We've had him before a couple times.
I shortened it.
Serious expressions on these people. I'll tell you, I've never seen such a group in my life. Buddy, did you ever see this happen before?
This is serious business here.
You're right.
We're concerned that the enchiladas aren't good.
The second red light means I'm out of power. That's how my story of my life.
Right, yeah. A lot of rice. That was corn. That's really blue on top. And for a while, brought it down in New York.
He doesn't get any of his sweater. I'll be very surprised. You don't count.
The battery thing is gone.
There's some left for me when I get this job done. Good morning, John. How are you doing? Good.
The lens moves in and out. It's not like
There's a technical discussion of the things I'm doing right or wrong with this piece of equipment. Hi, Bob. I was just saying I was listening into a technical discussion as to what's going right or wrong with this job.
We always found Tom Dowdell the best in the future, and we hope that he'll come back and visit our club, right?
All right. He said he's being driven out of town. I said, well, that's better than being kicked out.
That's true.
This long-range shot. Gunther's got a big smile and an empty plate.
Well, today theoretically was a change of command ceremony, but the damn commandee bailed out on me at the last minute, Bob Visser. So none of the other guys will get put aboard today either. We have guests. I have Carl Gormley here, resident of Rolling Hills. Project Mexico every year. Low overhead, right, Carl?
Aye.
Right.
No overhead.
No overhead, right. In fact, you sponsor part of the overhead. Group that donates items to the Mexicans in Ensenada, North Tecate, in that area. And he's done this for, God, I don't know how many years, Carl, since I've been
28.
28 years, yeah. A long time. Let's see. Tom Stansel, you have an introducer here, Bob.
The Bud.
Bud. Bub.
Tom Stansel is a good friend of some of us here, including Tom Dowdell, and he's taking me to the symphony concert tonight, so I said, well, let's turn about and fair play kind of thing. So, you're Tom Stansel. I'd like to introduce Tom Gregory, who was our speaker the last time.
Right.
And he liked this, and he said, well, I'll come back once more.
Good. I don't see any other unknown faces. We have a little problem today. Tom Booth, would you tell us what our problem is with the speaker?
Yeah, let's see. I'd like to normally introduce the speaker, and you've all gotten the notice on this. And our speaker today is Chuck Crocker, who's a major in the Army and retired from the Corps of Engineers. He's going to explain to us about the landslide. And it's on here. He's got his bachelor's degree in geology from Stanford. And I said there's a problem with his being here, but he's, I would have introduced him. He's from the heart of the South, and he's from Savannah, Georgia. And had I been able to introduce Chuck, I'd have introduced him as Major Rock of BS. Let me repeat that. It's, Major Rock of BS. The meeting actually is in a long time in planning, all of 2 weeks when we gave the cameos last week, and we found out that Tom was going to be leaving us, and so we've put together a special program in Tom's honor today. I'd like to turn the floor back to Tom.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I forgot one thing. I didn't have it written down. We always have a joke in the morning from, guess who? Vic Bennett. Vic, have you got a extricated joke today?
No. I told you.
I mean,
If you don't quit criticizing my stories, I'm not gonna tell them.
well, I didn't criticize it yet.
Before we got started, you asked me to tell a Washington D.C. story.
Yeah.
The one that's been going around lately, I guess, involves John Sununu. You have John Sununu, Muammar Gaddafi, and Saddam Hussein in a room. And you have a pistol and only 2 cartridges. Who would you shoot? And the answer is Sununu twice.
Yeah, get a copyright. $3 a piece. They're for the Army, Navy, Air Force, and even Marine Corps relief funds. He says he's got 13 of them on his desk back there. I guess if you put the money on his desk and took a pen, he seems to trust us. I said, he's leaving. He left 10 minutes ago. But he says, go back and put the money there.
Was that $1.50, you say?
Well, the raw cost is $1.50, but you give him 3. Well, that's not, no, get money out of these guys.
I think every member should
now that we don't have a speaker, what the hell are we going to do?
Well, we're going to have to wing it from here, I think. We're just going to have to take our improvisational skills, which we've got high confidence in this club.
Vic, could you, well, you don't have to go to work today, do you?
No, but I dressed up because of Tom.
You have a
You know, as most of you are aware, I'm in the banking business, and I don't know whether it's fortunate or unfortunate, but in this business, you find out a lot about people, some of which you wish you didn't know. And the last meeting, when Tom Dowdell said he was going to retire, I fell off my chair, because I don't know what the hell he's retiring from. I happen to know that he has a serious sleeping problem, because he has this recurring nightmare that he has a job. First time he came to see me about a deal, and that's about all I ever talked to him about was deals. Was when we had the great influx of Vietnamese people into Southern California, and he wanted me to finance a book for him. He wanted to write a Vietnamese cookbook entitled How to Walk Your Dog.
Creative, Tom.
The next deal he talked to me about was more recent, and he said he had an exclusive franchise with Fredericks of Hollywood for the Persian Gulf. He was going to get Iraq and Iran and Saudi Arabia and all those people and go over and sell this Fredericks of Hollywood merchandise. You guys will understand that, do you? No. And this business about retiring in Washington, actually, he's going in partners in the John Sununu School of Charm. Tom, we wish you all the best, and I won't tell everything that I know about it. Okay?
Thank you.
Well, gosh, Ron, how about you? You're Mr. Photographer.
Gee, you caught me off guard.
Well, you could turn the camera around and
Well, we could hold it here on you.
Well, there's a few stories we can tell about Tom, too, but I think Tom could best narrate the story about the time he was leaving, I believe it was one of those bistros down in Redondo Beach, and he had a piano on board of his truck. Tom, you want to take over from there? What happened that particular night?
Well, it was the night after Thanksgiving, some years ago. Many of you, Tom Stansel here can vouch for this, many of you have helped me move a small apartment upright piano around to different jobs. I don't think we ever brought it to your party by the time that we had the parties here while we've gotten rid of that. But it was at the Burt's Beach House, the place that preceded the Cheesecake place. I took the the piano on a truck down to Bert's by myself, and then these young blonde California boys come out and take the piano up on the second floor where we did a wedding reception. And at the end of the thing, I got them to take it down, and we loaded it up on the truck. And usually I would lay the piano on its back on the truck, so it was pretty flat. But I was lazy that night, and I had them stand it up, and I tied it on one side. So it's a small upright piano standing up on a pickup truck. And I decided to take in the beauties of the beach, so I went down along the beach instead of down normally Pacific Coast Highway to go home. And I went up that hill by, the Los Angeles French Academy there. There's a little crown in the road that if you happen to be driving along with a small upright piano, it's just the kind of impetus that will turn the piano over and have it fall out onto the ground. It did.
This is a very technical explanation.
You have an engineering degree?
It went into many pieces. It went into many pieces. I put it back together enough to get it back on the truck and drove home and sheepishly told my wife about it. And I fixed that piano up so I could do 3 more jobs before I finally retired it to an orphanage in Mexico where Carl goes to visit all the time.
Would you believe this?
Now, that's just the beginning of the story.
Well, Tom, I have another question. You're an august past president of this group. What were some of the things that you remembered most that happened during your administration? Did anything happen during your administration?
I remember we had a meeting at our house, and Vic was there. We were quite concerned about membership, and we tried to figure out what to do to bring in more members. And we decided to start serving breakfast.
And then what happened? All right, now, fellas, we have a little technical difficulty here. My battery light is flashing, so before I run out of power, I'm going to change the batteries, and you fellas...
Can you say anything? I don't know how man's mouth works without a set of bluegrass.
I think we should explain that he is connected with a lot of the things that happen here with the engineers in his position with Magnavox.
Yeah, I'll if you'd like, I'll just say very quickly. Tom Dowdell and I have been friends. I don't even remember when you moved and when I moved. I came to the Peninsula in '69, and you came here in '72. So basically, we've been friends ever since. Same neighborhood. For many, many years, served in St. Peter's Church together. So I've had lots of time with Tom and Phyllis, and it's been wonderful, especially to have him in the neighborhood. I was invited by Bud. The first invite was to try to roast Tom a little bit, and that's an incredibly difficult thing to do. In fact, I'm not sure I could even do it, so I won't even try, but I would like to make a few comments. First thing I did last night, came home late from work, and Bud had said, "Hey, are you going to come in?" We've been talking by answering machine. I don't think we spoke to each other until this morning, did we? And so I started writing down some adjectives about Tom in just random order. Interesting. I don't think anybody would challenge that. Challenging, second word. He certainly is a challenging person in many respects. Entertaining. Energetic. Changing. Always changing. Talented, certainly. Brash, clearly. Pushy. Effective. Sometimes lovable. Tough. Straight. Principled. Those are some of the words I would say about my friend Tom Dowdell. The closest thing I come to any kind of a roast would be wondering about his sanity on this move to D.C. I lived in that area for 8 years, just north of Washington, so I know a lot about it, and I grew up in Richmond, Virginia, just south of there, so I know a lot about the East Coast. And let me just tell you, Tom, first let me start with summers. There's something called heat and humidity. And boy, does Washington have heat and humidity in the summertime, so you'll really cook in that one. The other thing that we forget when we've lived out here for a long time is the East Coast has something called bugs. You'll learn about mosquitoes and flies and gnats and
Copperhead.
all sorts of wonderful critters like that. You've probably heard about crime back there, and I'm sure we have crime here, but maybe from the television, maybe you fear the police a little more than the criminals sometimes. One of the things that I don't understand why you're leaving is this ocean view. His house is on a nice bluff with a beautiful ocean view, especially from his hot tub that he built in there not so long ago. And the idea of sitting in the hot tub watching the sun go down over the ocean, he's moving away from this. In the winters, of course, you're going to find cold and damp and dreary winters. Fewer spectacular sunsets, and in fact, you won't see any of them over the ocean, particularly thanks to our LA smog. You know, we emphasize the sunsets a lot. But Washington, on the other hand, does have a few advantages. The spring and the fall is just beautiful. We on the West Coast, as you know, don't understand what green is. Every time I go back to the East Coast, I see green for the first time, and it's gorgeous. You'll see magnolias and oaks and cherry blossom trees, and it's beautiful. Big leafy trees. There's some bugs that are good bugs, lightning bugs. I miss lightning bugs, going out and seeing them fly around. Some people call them other things. Less smog. The metro is wonderful. It's a place where you have a sense that the world is swirling around you, the international community there, and the feeling of being part of the center of the pulse of the world is really remarkable. And regardless of your political views, the Washington Post is an exciting part of that. And of course, the most important draw of all is his two new grandchildren, which I'm sure he's going to love being with. Tom is a person who is never afraid to try something new and to thoroughly delve into it. Look at this move to Washington. This is basically a very fresh start for him and for Phyllis to say, we've had this wonderful time in California, and now we're going to start a whole new life in Washington, D.C. That is a remarkable willingness to change, to try something new. I remember a few years ago when Tom decided to take up photography, and he made it quite a process. I mean, he learned about taking pictures and developing pictures, and he doesn't seem to go into things half-heartedly. He delves in and understands the technical details, and he does a wonderful job of it. He was one of the first people I knew with a home computer and banking by computer over his modem, and I was always jealous of him having that wonderful capability and learning about using spreadsheets and so on. At his advanced age, starting a brand new job with Pepperdine. You know, what a remarkable thing, the ability to say, okay, I'm ready for a different kind of challenge and career. The work that he's done in helping bring housing to the world's third world countries around the world, that's something he's been involved with for many years and has done a wonderful job at. He has worked with Torrance Memorial Hospital in raising money and the evening of music that he worked on and sponsored. What good work there, and digging in and really becoming important to that activity. The piano episode was, I mean, here's a guy who's very talented, capable musically, and decides, well, I'll become the piano man, and I'll advertise myself, and I'll run the risk of somebody saying, I don't like that, or you know, this is terrible, or never calling him, and turning out that putting himself on the line, and they did, and they loved it, and it was wonderful. The work that he got into, or going up to Asilomar, some of the ideas that he ran into there and got excited about were things that he never thought he would believe and think. It was very challenging to Tom, and he became, I think, had a different perspective on life. A camper right in the middle of earthquakes, finding his vehicle rocking and shaking in that big Northern California earthquake. I don't think he really planned that one, and if he did, maybe we ought to keep that unsaid. One thing that he's done successfully over many years is be a slave trader. Now, you don't know about that perhaps, but as part of his job at St. Peter's, he's captured large numbers of teenagers and carried them to Mexico to help build cottages and houses and other sorts of slave labor activities down there, where these kids are laying concrete and putting up blocks and roofing and making facilities for orphanages and other activities down there. He's been for many years at St. Peter's a person who has given of himself, and Phyllis with him in leading the young people there and giving not only guidance and these types of things in Mexico. My kids went on those exercises, and the sense of self-reliance, the ability to hold a hammer and believe you can build something, which we don't have a chance very much to teach our children in this part of the world, is really wonderful. And then, of course, working with them on Sundays and giving them of himself and of his faith and of his spirit is a contribution to people that I think will live well beyond his years and our years. Tom can be a very blunt and straightforward person, and I want to say that I appreciate that. There was a time in my life when I was engaged in some things that I'm not terribly proud of, and coming out of that, I was telling my friends what had been going on in my life. And most people were very open and welcoming and saying, that's okay, we love you, it's good. And Tom was accepting of me also, but he was blunt about saying he didn't approve of that. And I respect that very deeply. And I'm very moved by that. He accepts support, and that takes bravery. As you probably know, and somebody alluded to it earlier, Tom has lost a few jobs over his years. And I remember his first firing that I had anything to know about, and many years ago. And he reached out to his friends. He invited us over to his house. And there was a gathering of his friends around him at this crisis time in his life. And it was kind of a party. It wasn't so much of a happy atmosphere, but it certainly was a gathering of comfort and strength and glad to be together. And it takes a certain courage and a certain openness to reach out and accept help from other people and accept support from other people. And I honor Tom for that capability. I appreciate Tom, going back to his piano work. He did the music for my daughter's wedding last year, and he was the piano man at the country club, and it was just wonderful, as always, to have him there, but most particularly because of our relationship over the years and my daughter's loving him, too, as part of her extended family growing up. And it was generous of him to do that, and certainly the occasion was made much better by that. Tom is an unconventional guy in a number of ways. You might have noticed the greeting that we shared. There aren't too many men who hug men, and some of you may be even terrified of that. But I've helped learn to be able to do that from my friend Tom Dowdell, and I'm glad that we know how to exchange hugs and meaningful. I don't have very much written down here, but Tom is full of ideas and full of information. If you want to know something about something, go ask Tom Dowdell, and if he doesn't know it himself, he'll find somebody who does know something about it. Tom, I'm really sad you're moving. I'm deeply saddened that you're moving. At the same time, I'm excited for you and your new adventure. You're an example to us all that new growth and adventure are always within our reach. Doing it is important. I'll really miss you, and I do love you. And thanks, Bud, for letting me come.
Bud, you're real close to this guy. Can you say anything bad about him? We got to dig up some.
I'll try.
Bad here.
The muses, they handle the arts in the world. The muses. They had a convention here last week, and one of them dropped something on my doorstep and said, "Read it." And actually, I feel a little reluctant, but as I look it over, a number of people have contributed to this, and somehow the muses got in contact with them. So I'm just going to read it, and you'll have to pardon me because I'm just doing what I was told to do. And it's called Tales of the Piano Man. The litany of Dowdell's sins. I'm sorry, Tom, but to follow you, I should have to tell the truth. And come to just one end. Between Tom's wit and wisdom, the truth can sometimes bend. No Presbyterian worth his salt in fair dispute, I'm sure, could outmatch Dowdell's recipes for making grace secure. But a few things should be said about this great man of the church. He sets ablaze our spirits, then just leaves us in the lurch. He's great for emulation of the good St. Peter's way. He sets up goals for this and that, then leaves and lets us pay. He's got a flair for all that's right, on how to pray and pledge, but heaven help you if you skimp your pledge or even hedge. He must have taken elocution lessons from the saints. How else could to fathom how he fends parishioners' complaints? You make a pledge, then keep it, Tom admonishes in Mass. Treat investment in salvation like a bill for cooking gas. He disarms you with his laughter and with his logic often stuns, but Washington can have him with his ill-begotten puns. I rated Tom a peerless friend and true. He's sort of been, but know him well and find that Tom's no stranger to big sin. He corners all the cocktail jobs with his matchless keyboard glory. In vain Peninsulans now search for equal repertory. He boasts of husbandly concerns to meet his good wife's wishes, but only every other day does Dowdell do the dishes. In Ireland, the Dowdells bike a super heavy mode. After 60 miles, his Phyllis lay exhausted on the road. Tom, whose Lehigh legs have won him macho physical renown, briskly left her with the taunt, "Try beating me to town." Lehigh smokers were the tops, till the Glee Club sang off key. Pianist Tom was not at fault. It was the stripper on his knee. The only other time they flubbed, Tom keyed them 6 tones high. The tenors herniated, and the basses thought they'd die. Tom's one of those vain tenors who will probably give no thought to all the consternation in our choir he has brought. See, the choir of St. Peter's is no different from the rest, treating tenors like star pitchers who have reached their strikeout crest. Now he'll shuffle off to Washington, never minding our poor choir, presuming some high bass might try to sing an octave higher. One day Tom went into shock on a phone call from St. Peter, whose solemn message was to hunt down every last pledged cheater. Of course, in time, Tom came to me. He should have cleared me first. Not only did he nail me last, but said I was the worst. Although it proved to be a dream, Tom said my heavenly hopes were better if I learned to count my church pledge envelopes. I'm sorry, Tom, I'd rather this had praised your warm and fuzzies. Instead, I've had to dig into your many scars and scuzzies. Well, I confess I've stretched a bit, but as I reach the end, truth is, no one I've ever known could be a better friend.
Carl, you're the guy that employed this guy.
I did?
Yeah, the piano man.
Uh-huh.
Every time I went to a party at your house, he was out there working, and Connie Wedberg said outside of Connie, he's the best piano player in TV. Does that sound right?
Oh, yeah. And he's always free, too.
Right.
Don told me...
He is. I didn't know that.
No direct charge.
Well, he always has things to us. He's very gracious. Don called me several days ago and said, think of something funny to say about our departing friend here. And I've thought about it all week, and I can't think of a damn thing that's funny about it. I did hear one, though, maybe you haven't heard, and that, did you know why it's so cheap to teach the Iraqi pilots how to fly? They don't teach them how to land. Don't have to teach them. You know, what you said, Tom, you had a list of characterizations, adjectives, and it's funny that we both came up with a list, some duplications, but what I think about Tom Dowdell is that the Boy Scout laws, must have been written with him in mind. Trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient. I don't know. I haven't talked to Phyllis about it.
Yeah, I talked to Phyllis about that one.
And let's see.
Cheerful.
Cheerful.
50.
Right. 50. I don't know. We better talk to Phyllis about that one too. And so forth.
You left out clean.
Well, I left it out because he sometimes he doesn't shave very close. He looks a little dirty.
How about brave and reverent?
I'll tell you something. I've been sitting down there in the congregation at St. Peter's for years, and you can't help but scan the choir up there. And it's gotten so every time I go by Tom's face, I think trustworthy, loyal, helpful. Pretty soon you get sick of it. Tom, would you just do something bad or wrong?
I'm moving to Washington.
That's bad and wrong. Well, anything I say would be very repetitious from what you folks have said already, but there's one thing that you also said, pushy. And by golly, he is pushy, You don't ever want to ask Tom to do anything and then expect him not to do it or not do it well or goof off. I mean, he just pushes right in there. He kind of, quite a few years ago, our piano player for our Christmas carol sing moved away, and somebody said, "Why don't you call Tom?" Well, he immediately said yes, and he's up there for 2-hour sessions and does everything right. I mean, we have soloists, and they just say, play something, and he plays it. What key do you want? Just start, like that, whatever it is, it's right there. And but the thing is that he's pushing this respect. Along about July, he says, "When are we going to have our next carol sing? I don't want to miss it. I got to make it. I got to crush it." And it's been the same with Project Mexico Fiesta. He brings that piano that fell off his truck finally, but he brings that up and he sits down on the patio, or he sits on the porch, or he sits out here and he bangs that piano. Now look, we got 3 mariachi bands up there. All the people are standing around that damn piano singing songs. I mean, he detracts. But you can't not ask him back the next year because he's right there saying, "When's the next fiesta? When's the next fiesta?" I mean, he's pushing. You notice that yourself, didn't you, Tom?
Think of the money you could save with it. Send those mariachi bands home.
And he was the same down at the hospital. He got involved with the foundation down there, and the first thing you know, he volunteers to be on the special events committee, and he's there every meeting, and he's running the thing, and well, that's Tom, and not to bore you to death. If I said anything mean, Tom, I think once in a while you should do something wrong. Something that you can come and say, "Geez, Carl, I made a mistake. I'm sorry." Anyway, I'm going to tell you, Tom, you've been a very, very great part of Harriet and my lives. And you've been so generous, and you're so talented. I'm serious. So talented and so giving of your talent. And we appreciate you very much, and we're going to miss you very much. In my life. Anybody else equally mad at Carl or these gentlemen would like to? Tom?
I'll say a word.
I'm going to go cover some areas that you haven't heard about yet.
Liberty in Washington.
Yeah, right. Back in '72, we were members of St. Peter's at the time, and we're out in the patio having coffee. Here come these 2
I would call East Coast vagabonds onto the patio. Oh, there's some strangers coming to our midst. Those who have been transferred from the East Coast to the West Coast. We went over to say hello. Hi, I'm Tom Dowdell, Phyllis Dowdell, flying with Tom and Carol Gregory. Where you from? Well, New Jersey. Oh, we're from New Jersey. Great, welcome. What school did you go to? You went to Lehigh University. Oh, I went to Lehigh University. Where does his wife go? Cedar Crest College. My wife went to Cedar Crest College. You're kidding. And here we meet, out here, 3,000 miles away, on the patio of St. Peter's. And he said, hey, I'm here to stay for a while. And he stayed. And he just became a major part of the activities of the church and of the community and of the musician activities around the area and so forth. And as through alumni activities, worked with Lehigh people out here, always looking for money for Lehigh. His wife got involved with a lot of charity activities with my wife, so we've been associated for many, many years doing things for the community and helping out. The other aspect about Tom, which I've learned to see and appreciate over the years he's been here, is his fundraising capability. He is a great fundraiser. If you don't say no, he'll come back to you again. And he'll come back to you again. And he'll eventually say yes. And then once you say yes, you're committed. There's no argument about it. You do it. Now, whether you're making a pledge down at St. Peter's or you're making a pledge to EDCS, which is the Ecumenical Development Cooperative Society, or to Lehigh, you do. You don't say no. You can't say no. And that's a pretty good fundraising technique that he's developed. The other aspect about Tom, which I've always marveled at and enjoyed, is the way he works with women.
Now we're going to hear something good. Hey,
this is ladies' man, I say.
Now we're getting to it.
There is always, they go around looking for the pretty women, which I enjoy doing myself. There's always Tom there first. He's got them lined up, and he does a very fine job with that, and especially with the young people at our church. He did an awful good job taking them down to Mexico and working with them and creating good citizens out of these young teenagers and so forth. So Tom, we're going to miss you, obviously. There's no more Lehigh people around that I know that can help me out. I'm going to have to do it all by myself. That's going to be hard to do. And we're going to, of course, miss Phyllis, and we wish you well. I can't understand why you ever want to leave this area to go back to the East Coast. But the boats. Just take the boats and leave with us. About a few snails we can take past. There's not snails back there. One thing. So good luck, Tom.
Thanks.
Thank you, Tom.
Where is Lehigh?
Lehigh, and Bethlehem, Pennsylvania.
Bethlehem. Right. I know it was in Pennsylvania.
The Star.
That's it. That's right.
That's where all the leg wrestlers come from.
That's right.
That's right. It used to be
Only
named
school
once in a
is
while.
leg
Yeah.
wrestling.
That's right.
Sacrifice top time in order to.
Don, I have a question to ask Tom. Reference was made to his advancing age. Is there any truth in the rumor that the other night you sat in your favorite rocker and you couldn't get it started?
It's on to you.
He's thinking for an answer.
Well, my niece, I was showing her the new the not so new camper van that we have. That we're going to take a trip across the country, and she was marveling at the stove and the refrigerator and all that sort of thing. And she said, "Have you gone very far in this van?" I said, "We've gone all the way."
Why are you looking at me when you say that?
We may want to edit that comment.
Well, Vern Stange put together this little list of who did what in his club when. I can't believe how hard Tom worked to become president. He started out in 1981 and 82 as head of the party group. I don't remember having a party that year. Did we have a party that year? You were in charge of it.
That was the party over at on the front side of the hill where we did the Texas dancing.
Oh, okay. I thought Bozarth was in charge of that.
Yeah.
You did that.
You thought Bozarth thought he was in charge.
And then he...
That's because I'm so pushy.
And then in the years of 82 to 83, he had the job that Tom Booth has here as manager of programs. And then he skipped the vice presidency because of his capabilities from Lehigh. He became president in the years of 83 to 84. I think it was a political move.
That's the Sununu move.
Yeah, that's about the time Vic Bennett became your campaign manager, right? Well, I think one thing, I'd like to have you put this on and get a picture of you, because this wasn't in existence. You couldn't?
No.
As president?
No.
I mean, just for the documentation?
All right.
Elsa? I don't know how this thing goes.
No choice.
Right to left or left to right? I think it goes this way. Owen Hall created this thing, and you'd have to know him to understand. It has many fond memories. El Supremo, he wore this out in town, went shopping with it.
I could wear this in the choir.
Well, we can have another copy.
Turn around here.
No, let's go the other way.
Wonderful.
Once more. Once more.
Now I want it back.
I was going to get that pin off.
Well, you can have that too for $3.
Well, I got to tell you that you probably know if you've sung in the choir that basses and tenors have nothing to say to each other except insults. And the one time that we just happened to be sitting next to each other was in one of the requiems that we sang. That's how I first got to know Tom's name. That's how I got acquainted. So ever after that, I've been a little more kindly toward tenors.
Good. Well, we have a Peninsula Breakfast Club parchment, which was made up by one of the previous administrations. And this is the first one I've ever seen, so you're going to get this thing. It says, the officers of the Peninsula Breakfast Club of Palos Verdes, California, on the recommendation of its membership, that's not quite true, because nobody has recommended him, confer this award of merit upon Tom Dowdell of Counterman for his inspiring leadership and unselfish dedication to the perpetuation of the principles and goals of our organization. You want to get a picture of this now? Tom, this is it.
What's this?
This is what they do in Washington, D.C. Right. You always have a president shake his hand. Well, we establish them every day.
Breakfast.
That makes him a lifetime member.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, breakfast every day.
One thing I want to do is thank Tom Booth, who thought this thing up. I was sitting there at home thinking, God, we can't let him get out of town with doing something. I thought a big dinner would be just impossible to create, knowing how much it's a problem getting Nizitich set up. And Tom came up with this idea, and your wife guaranteed you'd be here. And I thought, boy, this is going to be dicey, because my wife can't guarantee anything about me. So you must have a wife that keeps you under control.
She lets
But
me come here.
we really appreciate Tom and Tom and Tom and Tom.
I want to thank
God
you
bless
all.
you.
I think we ought to have a few words from Tom.
Yeah.
You guys, rebuttal. I'm really more pushy than they say. And I appreciate all that you've said, and you've said some very sensitive things, and I'm touched about it. Everyone here has a story of relationship that I have with you all, particularly Tom Stansel. There was a time some 10 or 12 years ago when Tom Stansel wanted to move to the east and take a new job with a new company, and unfortunately he came, or we went out, we were going out to a concert together, he with his pushy friend, and we talked him out of that, and that was quite a thing. He hasn't tried to talk me out of this one quite, but I know he's thought about it, and I appreciate your love and your concern. Bud Anderson, you know, is a national treasure. You may not realize that. Being here in a peninsular mode of living that we have, we are kind of cut off from some of the East Coast centers of power and so forth. But in Bud Anderson, you have a newspaper man from the upper Middle West. You know, if you go far enough north in Minnesota, you fall off.
That's right.
Well, just before you fall off, that's where Bud Anderson came from. And he was known from town to town as the best cub reporter, editor, publisher, whatever, of various publications, particularly newspapers. And he eventually found his way to the West Coast and to USC, where he was publications editors and so forth. And, you know, he's still at it. If you pick up the Peninsula News this morning or last week, why, you'll see one or more articles and interesting developments that Clarence has put together. And in my leaving, why Clarence has been involved in many different activities, and each time he writes something, as he has written this morning, and they've been gems. They've been wonderful. Thank you very much. And I could really say that about so many of you, and I appreciate that. I said last week that I think we as men, from all kinds of walks of life, need each other as a connection, as a place to share your ideas that you can't do with the people you work with necessarily, or your family and so forth. You need another third-party direction, and we get that from this group. And it's a marvelous thing, and it's important that we continue to bring in new blood that brings us new subjects and new experiences that we can add to our own experience as we move on in different ways. I thank you for your fellowship and for your concern, and you do have a place in Washington now that you can come to. You also have your man in Washington now. You can stop dealing with Sununu and start dealing with me. Thank you very much.
When you go to the government printing office, and you'll feel like what it's like being a minority while you're in there. I want to thank the photographers today, Bob Mathis and Vern. Vern, are you going to publish this thing or put it on channel 43 or?
I don't know what Vern's going to do, but we're going to donate this tape to Tom and for posterity.
Good.
He may want to edit it and destroy it, but we're going to give it a fighting chance.
Well, I do get names mixed up, don't I, Bob?
And I'd like to thank all those who contributed to this on Tom's behalf. He's going to be surprised at some of the comments and perhaps not so surprised at some of them.
Hey, Don, are you going to do your joke again for the tape that you got missed out when you...
Oh, which joke was that?
You told during the interview.
Oh, yes. Riverside, 1935, Troop 7. Right.
Well, that was the pupil one.
Well, this is the prelude. I have told this several times.
He's setting right. Get it on the table.
Oh my, said the professor, as his glass eye rolled down the sink, I've lost another pupil. End the meeting.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.